Hello, everyone, and welcome to Leadership and Innovation Unlocked with Inclusive Collective, where we bring you news and analysis of the latest in people and workplace culture and share stories and learnings of leaders and organizations driving performance and innovation through inclusion. We do all that on this little show. I'm your co-host, Rob Hadley, people and culture strategist, specializing in operational excellence, transformations, and analytics. And I am joined by my friend, Dr. Nadia Butt, a workplace culture strategist and talent development consultant. Nadia.
Oh, hi, Rob.
Hi. You look different.
I do.
Yeah. Did you get the hair blown
Get
out?
get some get
Did you
some
get some pampering?
Botox. No,
Did you get some pampering? Were you
I
pampered?
did.
And
Had some
all
self-care.
right, and we should
Yeah,
say that you had a birthday, so I just want to say
I
happy
did.
belated birthday as we
Oh,
come back on the show today. So,
thanks,
and
buddy.
then our setup today is I just wanted to hear, you're nearly 40 years old, Nadia. So,
I know.
like
Actually,
you've
fun story. I did get my hair blown out the other day,
yeah,
and the hairstylist was like, "Oh," because I didn't know her. It was at like this new place, and she was like, "Hey, um, happy birthday." And she's like, "How old are you?" And I was like, "Guess," because I don't mind if people ask. I was like, "You
yeah.
can guess." And I'm always curious when people guess. She's like 37. And I was like, "You're the
You're like
best."
huge tips.
Yeah, huge tips.
Huge tips.
But no, that's not how old I am.
Yeah. Oh, I
I'm
mean, it's
at
pretty close. You're not that far. You're not that far away, right?
I mean, it was a solid 10 years from there. So
Well, no.
um
Well, give me some
yeah.
advice, right? So
Yeah.
you've been around the sun a few
I've been
times.
around the
Give me
block.
like
Yeah.
what? Yeah, exactly. Well,
um
I wouldn't put it that way, but
I
sure.
You know what it is? I think as you get older, and you probably can relate to this too, like as you get older, like self-care
Uh-huh.
is just so extremely important. And that I think this year was like the theme, my birthday party theme was like just self-care.
Okay.
And so I spent the day like I got a massage, I got my hair blown out. I took myself to breakfast, I got a coffee, I got my car washed. Like I just did things that like throughout the week I don't normally do for myself.
Uh-huh.
Worked out, and then had like a really nice meal.
There you
So it
go.
was like really good.
Yeah.
And in terms of wisdom, so that's what I would say. I would say like focus on self-care as much as you can on your birthday.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah.
I try to make sure that my birthday passes up without anyone knowing about it. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah, well, I
uh,
know when it is. So I've also decided that birthdays are just like annual performance reviews, and
yeah.
I'm just gonna give myself exceeds expectations every single time.
Whatever. The high end of the range. Yes.
Yeah.
Nadia, you did great this year.
Yeah,
You did great. You had a great
exactly. You
year.
did great.
You outperformed all expectations.
Well, and it's wild because last year at this time I was defending my dissertation. So like it was just a whole year of like reflection and like what a
Yeah.
journey and like meaningful work and like not having to write. So it was like really fun. But
Well, congratulations and
thank
many
you.
more wonderful years ahead for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, Rob, on our program today, we're going to tackle leadership silence and AI
Okay.
and an NBA executive's firing. And then we'll be joined by Dr. Nicole Boyko of Perceptics to tell us all the things companies are doing wrong when trying to understand employee engagement. So, really excited for this episode. And then later, I'm going to rant, and Rob, you're going to rave.
Awesome.
But first, as always, let's get to the deets.
All right. What do you got for me?
So, this week, actually, according to HR Drive, early November, Mercer released data from their global survey that they conducted where they found 8,500 workers widespread anxiety about the impact of AI, so artificial intelligence, and other new technologies in the workplace. So basically, this article mentions that there's this massive amounts of anxiety, especially it's especially high in regions and industries with greater AI use. For example, like technology sectors.
Mm-hmm.
I also mentioned, one major contributing factor is what Mercer terms a leadership vacuum, where many employees say their direct managers or HR or CEOs have not communicated how AI is going to affect their roles or the business. It found fewer than 20% of employees say that their direct manager has communicated about AI's impact, and only about 25% say they've heard from the CEO, and about 13% have heard from HR regarding, what AI means and the impact of AI within the organization. So I thought this was just like really interesting. I'm just so curious what your thoughts are around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. No surprise, right? So first, my first question is: have the managers already been replaced by robots, and therefore
Yeah.
they're keeping it they're keeping it to themselves?
All
That's
right.
that's one option.
Yeah.
But I think that look, if the CEOs and managers do not know, right? For the most
Yeah.
part, they do not know. So if they're 20% communicating, then that means that there's probably 20% that have any idea of what it's going to mean for their workforce, right?
Sure.
They are communicating to their boards and that they're going to realize huge gains, but they have no idea how they're going to do that for the most part, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that no one necessarily knows. There's a lot of things happening right now. The only thing that workers should be doing is running as fast as they can to build AI skills and fluency. And then if
Sure.
you're a leader, you should be orientating everything that you do around making sure that you're positioned to take advantage of the technology, right? And that
Yeah.
includes,
Mm-hmm.
to your point, to the story, communicating with your employees and devoting energy to developing a high trust environment, because that's the
Yeah.
only way that any of these things are going to actually help you.
Yeah, I agree. I think like when I read this report, I thought like, yes, this is exactly like what we've been seeing with our clients and just in general all around, right? There is this real like leadership vacuum around AI. I know for myself, like I'm still trying to understand how it impacts the work I do or the work that my clients are doing. And I think managers currently are not being equipped to have these conversations. And that fuels so much unnecessary anxiety. Like I see it, I actually hear it a lot through my friends and my
Mm-hmm.
family. And me, I go straight to like psychological safety. Like, so
Yeah.
when people don't understand how they fit into the future of work, they'll shut down, right?
Right.
They're not gonna speak up. They're not gonna innovate. And that's why, I know you will agree with me on this, that change management, right? Leadership coaching, these elements, even lean, right? Process improvement, it's really core at this moment, right?
Yeah.
The upskilling, the clarity, the continuous improvement mindset, like all of these things are really critical. It's literally the framework we need to help people navigate this type of change.
Right. Right. And how do you develop psychological safety? One thing, if you don't know what is happening, don't be afraid to admit it and really say, hey, we're going to work through this together,
Yeah,
and communicate as much as possible, right? Like
exactly.
that's the one, arrow you have in your quiver, is just to be honest and open about where things are, and that we're going to learn this together, right?
Totally. Totally. What do you got for us this
All right,
week?
Nadia. So I gave you a sports assignment. I'm
Yeah.
thrilled to hear your take. This
Okay.
last week, Dallas Mavericks general manager Nico Harrison was fired 9 months after making a shocking and widely criticized move. He traded away his star player, Luka Doncic, to the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, Nadia, if you know basketball, and I'm sure you do, the whole goal is
D
to
Brown
have
used to be my favorite player. I just
D
want to say,
Brown.
like
There
in
you
the
go.
1990s, D Brown Celtics. Yeah, had a
Luka
huge
Doncic
poster
is
of him in my
slightly
room.
better than D Brown, just
Okay.
slightly. The whole point is to have one of these like best players, because then you have a
Yeah.
chance to actually win, right? And so, and this particular player is one of the best, right?
Okay.
So this was widely viewed as a disaster at the time, and then the fact that Luka Doncic has started off to play really well for the Lakers and the Mavericks have struggled has only worsened the impact. The fans would show up to the game chanting "Fire Nico," and
Oof.
so he was fired this past week. And you know, I I'll let you just go with it, because
Yeah.
you probably don't spend a lot of time focusing on this stuff. But this was
Yeah.
interesting to me as a you know we're always trying to think about, like, we're always pushing people to innovate within organizations.
Sure.
This was
Yeah.
a risky move and it didn't necessarily pay off, but I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, Rob. At first, I was wondering what this had to do with our podcast, but sports. I think I connected it to leadership, but I think what I realize is actually this is about leadership and organizational dynamics. So I'm in, and of course, I'm always very happy to talk about anything that impacts my favorite people in Dallas. Okay, so what struck me about this situation is how much I think it highlights the role of leadership, maybe even leadership alignment and culture, and like I said, team dynamics. And I think when you make a massive change, and again, my change management like brain is always kicking in,
Right.
like maybe trading or you're trading your franchise player. Like I don't really know all of the details around that, but I think if you don't do it without the right communication or the right buy-in, maybe even like cultural readiness, then you're going to start to create instability, and your trust starts to erode. So I'm always curious, like what happens to the team when there's trades. And I think people then start to even question, like, what's the vision, what's like the strategy, and then you kind of see the ripple effects immediately, right? So like maybe performance drops, or like accountability gets fuzzy, whatever those things are. So to me, I don't think this is actually just a sports story, which like at first I was like, what are we doing here? I think it's like a classic leadership lesson in change management, right? Like you can't redesign a team without a strategy, or like hope is not a plan.
Right. There you go.
Right.
There you go.
And so I'm curious, like what was is my takeaway like on point,
No,
or
it's
are you like
super
no.
on point and super and you hit a lot of different issues, right? So like the thing
Yeah.
that it brought up for me is that, the I want to talk about like the right way to take risks within the organization, right? And you hit
Mm-hmm.
on a bunch of them. So it reminded me of a lesson I learned many years ago, right? So at the financial services company that I was at, I was
Yeah.
pitching to our head of product a plan to do away with all of our service fees. Like, so we made a ton of money on little like installment fees, billing fees, things like that.
Sure.
But companies like Southwest Airlines were eliminating fees, and they were going to market with that, saying that's a differentiator, right? And using
Okay.
that. And so I
Yeah.
pitched this to the head of product, and I laid it out. And I was so proud of myself. It was just a small group,
Yeah.
and this was and he said, "Hey, look, I'm all for taking risks and innovation, but you haven't distributed the personal risks, right? If this
Mm.
goes wrong, then the only people who get fired are you and me, right? And so you need to make sure that you get everyone else in the boat with us before
Okay.
we start to think about whether or not I can sign off on this." And so
Sure.
it just highlights to me the difference between organizational risk and personal risk. This person had the exact right attitude, right? Like he wasn't saying no. He was like,
Yeah.
you build a coalition. You build, everyone needs to be together on this, and
Right.
then we go together, right? So if there's
Mm-hmm.
something goes wrong, then we don't. It's not just the two of us that are the face of this, and we get fired, right? And
Right.
so
Right.
Nico Harrison, he did that, right? He was the face of it. He was the only person. He said, "Hey, this was my decision. I made this by myself." And when it didn't work, he got fired, right? And so
Yeah.
like that's
Okay.
so you hit on a bunch of one, but that was like the first thing I thought about was some of the lessons that I learned doing innovation inside
Ah,
corporations.
interesting. Yeah. No, that's a really great story, and thank you for sharing that. Um, okay, very good. Well, there was a lot that also happened in the news in the last couple of weeks, but these were the two that we wanted to bring up. So thanks for that, Rob. That's it for the deets. Next up is our conversation with Dr. Nicole Boyko.
Welcome back, folks. This week, our guest is Dr. Nicole Boyko,
Hello.
Principal Workforce Transformation Consultant with Perceptics. Nicole is the go-to expert in employee experience survey design, measurement, and analysis. Prior to Perceptics, she developed and led groundbreaking employee experience programs at Liberty Mutual. That brings a tear to my eye to say that. But Nicole has a PhD in organizational psychology, and she is a legend at SIOP. That's the Society of Industrial Organizational Psychologists, for those that don't know. Nicole Boyko, we've been trying to get you forever. It's so great to see you.
It's
Thanks so
so
much
great
for
to
joining
see
us.
you. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to chat with you both.
Hi, Dr.
And
Boyko.
it brought a tear to my eye because you really did groundbreaking stuff at Liberty Mutual. So, yeah, great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here.
It's so good to have you, and also brings a little tear to my eye because I also worked at Liberty, and also kind of understand probably the rigor that you went through in your doctoral program when you were going through your research, because I also did similar type of research as you. But I want to dive in, and honestly, from the beginning, because you research topics that I personally love, and I'm sure our audience really just in general is here to listen about. I would love to know kind of what drew you to focus on your work, especially as it relates to like workplace engagement.
Yeah, I think I was really lucky because when I did my undergrad, I was at Quinnipiac University, so I was at QU, and they had a fantastic psychology program there. And right from the get-go, intro to psych, they had folks come in basically from each of the different disciplines. And I was really torn because I loved the idea of kind of applying psychology and really thinking about, people and behavior and what makes everybody tick. But I wanted to find a way to bridge that and say, how can I do this in the business world? And so when I went in and learned about industrial organizational psychology, it was like, boom. It's like, oh, it's like the perfect merge of the two things that I really kind of care about. And so it was love at first sight. I've been nerding out about it ever since. I liked it because when I first started, as Rob probably knows from our experience before, when I went through my dissertation, when I went through my internship, all of that, I was a working mother. And so I fell in love with this idea of work-life balance and workload and all of those things.
Yeah.
And so I think it just started there. And I'm like, I've lived through this. And it's so funny now because now a lot of people are working from home and are, working parents and having to kind of deal with that. And just the landscape has shifted so much. But I think it just started early for me. I felt like I was living through that experience. And so I wanted to understand more and I wanted to help others in terms of employees, people, but also organizations.
Yeah.
That's where we are now.
Yeah. I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Hey, Nicole, you're the perfect person to have on right now because you work with big enterprise clients, and so it's 2025. It's almost 2026, right?
I know.
But people aren't saying. You could correct me if I'm wrong, but they're not saying, "Hey, we don't care about inclusion. We don't want to look at differences in sentiment between demographics."
Mhm.
Right? That's basically true. But can you explain that inclusion and belonging and equity, these are concepts that have really always been with us, right? Like
Mhm.
they're fundamental to employee engagement, employee experience. You can't just wish them away no matter what the political environment is.
Yep.
That's you agree with that?
It's probably the number one topic that comes up with every single customer as we're either kicking off their survey, for this year, or as they're just thinking about their overall listening strategy. And it's not just about the questions we're asking, but to your point, Rob, it's what data can we bring in or what can we report out on? And yeah, our research has shown that year over year over year, a top driver of engagement across industries, across the globe is belonging, inclusion and belonging. And so we always kind of preface that it's one of the top 10 employee experience factors when you're thinking about how do you sort of holistically measure employee experience. It's not just about engagement. It's all these other elements that are more actionable that help to drive engagement, and belonging is one of them. And again, it's a top 5 global driver of engagement. The way that we kind of position it, or I position it when I talk to leaders and sort of demonstrate the impact, is I think very quickly we go to diversity and we think about, maybe these things. But when you actually look at what's impacting whether somebody feels like they're included or that they belong in an organization, the top 2 things that come up are not necessarily D, E, I, and B related. People feel like they belong in an organization, one, when they feel like they have a fit and a future with that company because they feel like they can grow their career. So growth and development is a top driver, if you will, of belonging. So I feel like I belong if I can grow and develop and kind of continuously learn within my organization. And then the other piece of that is also about, do I have a future here? Do I feel like I belong? But it's all related to transformation and change. So as senior management and leadership teams are talking about where's the organization going and how are we going to get there, that's the other big piece of belonging. Do I feel like I have a future? Do I buy in to where we're going? And do I feel like I'm a part of it? So it's all about the involvement. Do I feel informed? And the other big piece of it, which is, the whole point of employee listening, is, do I feel like my voice is helping to inform where we're going, right? Am I kind of a part of that strategic direction?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you're speaking my language right now. So that is, I don't know, Rob, if you had a follow-up question, but I have several
No,
questions.
go ahead.
I
I have
wanna
many,
jump
but go ahead. Yeah.
So I had to write it down. So you said you're seeing really like folks having this desire as it relates to belonging, that it's around their development and around like is it transformation of change?
Yeah, it's just kind of like the strategic direction. Where's the organization going?
Okay.
Yeah.
So like from your research and just your observations, your experience, what role do you think leaders or like the leadership mindset, what role does that play in fostering that type of belonging? And
So,
I
yep, go ahead.
actually I'd love even like what mistakes have you seen? Because I would imagine there might even be some like mistakes that leaders are making that are not driving that particular type of belonging.
Yeah, I think in respect to sort of the latter, if we talk about that transformation and that strategic direction and thinking about the future, one of the other top 5 global drivers of engagement is I have confidence in senior management. So they're very related. Like, do I feel like I belong? Do I feel like I have confidence for management to kind of bring me and kind of move us into the future? And a big piece of that, when you break down, because that's a big question. Like, what do you mean by
Wow.
confidence in
Yeah.
senior management, or
Yeah.
the trust question? When
Yeah.
you break that down, it's really what employees are really saying is, do I trust that the leadership team or, my senior leaders are going to make the work easier for me and break down barriers so that I can be effective and efficient and kind of come along with them on that journey?
Mm.
So that's a big piece of it. And a lot of that comes down to not just the where we're going, but again, it's the how we're going to get there and like the why behind that. And it's the cascade down of that. So maybe there's this very big picture strategy, but how does that break down into priorities? And are the leadership teams aligned on those priorities? And are they thinking about how that's going to affect the front lines? So how are your decisions up at the top affecting the actual work that's going to happen? And that's what we see, is that there's these downstream impacts on things like cooperation and feelings of bureaucracy,
Mm.
and just how we're kind of getting the work done. So it's like all of these various elements of the employee experience that are very much interrelated with one another. So it's kind of interesting, because I think a lot of the times when I go into these presentations, leadership teams don't see those connections. Like, I don't know why core operation has to do it with the strategy for the future, but it actually does, because it all starts at the top. And we have to make sure we're including, involving, and informing kind of everybody as much as we can through that journey.
Got it.
Yeah, and I think that also, and I think that you've written about this, that sometimes leaders will say, this doesn't apply to us, right? Like they have a hard time seeing necessarily their themselves in the results that you get back, right? And this is, in your role, you're talking to the top folks in the people organization often, right? So how do you get people to understand or see their own accountability, especially the senior most folks, in their results?
Yeah, it's a
How do
good
you do it?
question. It's a good question, but I mean, it starts at the top. We can't ask, our managers and our middle managers to take action if they're not seeing that start at the top. Culture starts at the top. And so that's what we try to do when I go into those conversations. I think the 2 big things that I like to pull in is, a lot of the times we ask questions like, I believe feedback from this survey is going to be used to make improvements, or I've seen action taken. And if you kind of cut the data by that, for people who said, yeah, you took action, or nope, you didn't, or I don't believe that you will, you see 50, 60 point gaps in favorability
Oh, wow.
scores kind of across the employee experience. So I think that's a piece of it. But I think the other big piece of it, Rob, is what we're trying to really do now is move beyond just the engagement score and just the kind of the sentiment data, if you will, and really tie it to business outcomes. So,
Mm.
hey, if you don't work on whether it's communication or collaboration or whatever it is, whatever is, driving engagement in your organization, you're going to see people leave. We do a lot of tying back to retention and voluntary turnover, for instance. And if you they took the survey last year and maybe have since left, and then we go back and we say, okay, for everyone who took that survey, for those who voluntarily left, look at the things that they scored significantly lower on compared to those who stayed. Lo and behold, it's usually those top drivers of engagement. So it's demonstrating, it's the sentiment data is telling you this. And these people actually left. So we need to be proactive, and we need to start that at the top and have kind of a cascade down. Leadership needs to be aligned on like what those priorities are and where we need to take action. And the more you can tie that to the strategies, the objectives, the things that are already going on in the organization, the better, because then we're connecting that feedback.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point. And the second kind of like takeaway that you talked about earlier about like transformational change and kind of like from a strategic perspective, I'm curious from your observations. Like recently there's been, well, even last year, there were so many layoffs at major corporations, even small corporations. And now we're hearing like Target and Amazon having these like massive layoffs. I'm curious from your perspective, like how do leaders maintain kind of this like connection and engagement within their teams when there's such a change in the culture based off of laying these people off, but then also from a strategic perspective, like I would imagine there's change in priorities and change in goals. Any kind of insight into like what leaders can do to maintain that connection and that engagement?
Well, I think so. Two things. One interesting thing is the way that we measure engagement is we're looking at things like pride in the organization, and intent to stay is one of those other things. And we tend to see those score really high. So, think about the external context that we're living in, right? There's the job market's not great in a lot of the industries that I'm supporting. And so people are, I'm really highly favorable. I'm going to stay here. Yeah. But then if you ask another engagement question, like, would you recommend this company as a great place to work? They're like, nah. So I'm saying that because I think it's important for leaders not just look at that absolute engagement score and say, hey, we're doing fine. We can ignore this. Like everyone's feeling good. Because if you look at those gaps between intent to stay and that advocacy question, would you recommend? There's usually about an 8-point gap or like across industries. So that's where we need to focus. And I think to your question, that's why it's important to have a continuous open conversation about employee experience and listening. It can't just be one and done. And especially when changes happen or these big announcements come out, that's the time that we want to measure the experience and have maybe that topical pulse or get in there. And again, bring them along for the journey. Like you said this, we're going to do that. We hear you. We acknowledge the pain that you're going through. And sometimes there might not be something that you can do about it as a leader. Sometimes something might be out of your control. And I think it's good to acknowledge that too.
Yeah.
That you just reminded me. I used to manage a team and and you'd have people like Nicole, right? And I'd be like, these are great results. Look how good a manager I am. Yeah. And Nicole would be like, look, I can find a lot of room for improvement for you, Rob. Yep. And like within the data. Yeah. So as a starting point. Tell me about AI. What do people like about AI, right? Oof. Like they're excited about it.
It's a loaded question, Rob.
Just go. But, I mean, I guess, the first thing that I thought of when you're talking about senior leaders and, and people seeing, do I feel like I belong here and have a place going forward? And these are the right people to get me there. Mm-hmm. That's interwoven with what's happening with AI. And so I don't know, what are people seeing or feeling or how employees feeling about it?
Yeah. So AI, I was thinking about this as I was preparing to have this conversation. It's wild because if I go back 6 to 8 months at my current job, we just started thinking we've got to start asking about AI. And now it's like, boom, right? It's everywhere. So thank God we started asking. But the interesting thing is we have all kinds of questions that we can ask, like comfortability. Do you feel like you have the support you need? And then a lot of it's really kind of about that vision, that transformation and that strategy. That's the number one thing that we're hearing. So it's less about other tools available to me. Do I feel that it's more, again, where are we going as an organization when it comes to AI? What's our AI strategy? And the big piece of that, again, is not just like, this is the faraway place that we want to get to, and we'll let you know when we're there. It's how do we make sure that we're sort of giving updates and being very transparent along the way. Small, little, tiny wins, right? We've got X amount of users trained up on whatever it is, our internal chat GPT. So it's those small wins, but it's also sharing back. And here's also what we've learned. And again, just like anything else, I think the more we can listen to our employees and not just let it be the leaders or the folks that are kind of, using it, but how do we bring that employee voice into that strategic conversation around the AI direction? But that's what's really interesting. Scores are very low right now because people don't know. It's a lot of neutrals. People are like, I'm not sure. I'm not really sure where we're going. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how that changes. But that's the biggest thing we've seen when it comes to sort of the impacts on experience is it's a lot more about the vision and the strategy and the planning. And again, that's all about leadership and how they're making sure to kind of communicate back and keep everybody involved in that.
That's great. So
Yeah.
just sort of as a final question, what are you excited about as it relates to like people analytics and just learning more about like insights and of the organizations that you partner with and the teams that you work with? Like, what are you excited about in the future?
AI.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
say that because if I think about, at Perceptics right now, there's so much more opportunity. I think we've really figured it out with the listening. I think for the most part, most mature organizations understand you can't just survey once a year. It's got to be continuous. You've got to connect the dots holistically.
Yeah.
Yeah, get that. It's the other side of that. It's the action taking part. Like that's what we see as the number one barrier to listening
Yeah.
is I see my data. I can interpret it. I know what I need to work on, but I don't know what to do about it. So that's the big thing that, we're focused on, that a lot of organizations are focused on. It's how do we get to that data and get to the actionable insights quicker? And that's where a lot of our behavioral science is coming into play. How can we make sure that everyone's involved in it? It shouldn't just be leader driven or manager driven. We want everyone, including individual contributors or the folks on the floors or the front lines, to be a part of that. So everyone's driving those outcomes in a positive way. So that's kind of where I see things going. Is it's more about the acting piece now. And again, we've got a lot of technology to help with that and to let it move faster, but also hopefully more easy to kind of unpack all those insights too. We don't want analysis paralysis. Let's get to the most important pieces and let's start to take action. And again, connect it back. You said this, we're doing that.
Yeah.
Right.
It's great.
Right.
And that
That
makes
is
people feel like
amazing.
they belong to bring it all back.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole Boyko, thank you so much. This is busy
Yes.
season for surveys and dealing with end of the year and people thinking about the strategy for next year. So, thanks so much for taking the time. We're already thinking about part 2 of this conversation.
Yeah.
We'll bring you back. I'm losing my voice. I'm so excited. But thank you so much for joining us on Leadership and Innovation Unlocked. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back with Con Reflections and Raves and Rants.
Welcome back, folks. We just finished chatting with Dr. Nicole Boyko of Perceptics. Rob, what stood out to you?
Well, I go, several years back with Nicole. So, the one thing that stood out to me again, and forever since I worked with her, is that you got your culture amps, you got your Qualtrics in this
Oh, yeah.
this engagement space. But
Yeah, I
but
feel
I
like you
would
were
go
so
with
excited.
I would go with Perceptics because they don't have. The one thing that they have is Dr. Nicole Boyko, right?
Oh, I
So
love
she
it.
is
That's great. She's
she's
great.
the top,
Yep.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, a lot of great tips, and really looking forward to some of our listeners learning from that. You don't explicitly been in this space, but what did you think?
Yeah. No, but I will tell you, I love this space. Like, I think what really stood out to me is how often leaders don't see themselves in the data. Like she emphasized that, right? She clearly said like senior leaders like love the high engagement scores, but they kind of overlook that action taking is kind of where you see, what did she say, like 50 to 60 point difference or something across employee experience. I just thought that was so interesting because it does hold true. I've observed that before. And so I really enjoyed the conversation. I think I'm actually very excited. I think it would be really worthwhile for her to come back.
Yeah,
Perhaps in 2026 we have her come back, but
it
I
reminded
think
me.
she,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Sorry,
No, go ahead.
sorry. It reminded me that really smart people, well, like you said, can find a way to show that to manipulate or think about the data in a way that that makes themselves look good
Oh, totally.
and
Yeah.
not see themselves in maybe something that requires action.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that holds true, and she emphasized that, and I think like right, it's almost like a wake up call. Like I think everything she was saying reinforces, the concepts of belonging and strategy and growth and change and innovation. Right, none of that sticks if leaders don't see their role in the feedback that's provided to them through assessments or through engagement surveys. So I just thought really great point and great conversation, and totally worth a conversation, in the next few months or in 6 months or
Well,
so.
we'll have to ask her.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to be like, let's hear what's happening. Like what changes have you seen? What's going on?
Awesome.
But yeah, so really great conversation with her. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope everyone really enjoyed that conversation.
All right, Nadia. So let's wrap this up. What do you got for me? Let's do a little ranting and raving.
All right. I'm going to rant, but first is a rave and then a rant for me.
Oh, good.
So, it's actually the last couple of weeks, it's been a really great week for Muslim representation in the U.S. Zohran Mamdani just won, along with several other notable Muslim politicians across the country. Zohran ran like a really great race. And so on one hand, we're seeing this surge in visibility and leadership and, really political voice. But at the same time, this is where my rant comes in. I was reading an article, this one in particular was Al Jazeera, about how it just kind of paints like a really like sobering picture. The authors talk about how Islamophobia in the U.S. has actually taken rise. It's been on the rise, but it's continuing.
Mm-hmm. And
they talked about like how the index went from 25 in 2022 to 33 in 2025, and it's even higher among certain religious groups. And what they show is clearly is that anti-Muslim rhetoric isn't just coming from like one political party. It's actually showing up across the spectrum in campaign language and public discourse. And that rhetoric actually has like real consequences, right? Like there's job loss, there's bullying, there's exclusion, and even sometimes violence. And so for me, this really connects directly to the workplace and to my own research that I've done on Muslim professionals.
Mm-hmm.
When there's harmful narratives that grow in society, they bleed into organizations, right? They impact psychological safety, they impact belonging, and whether people feel supported by their employers or not. So even in a week where we're celebrating representation and wins, we also have to acknowledge that the climate people are navigating every day at work, and really acknowledge like why intentional leadership and inclusion still matter. And that's kind of what Nicole had mentioned in the episode. Like leaders have to see themselves in the data and really take action. That's
well
my
said.
rant.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. Yeah. Great. Yeah, definitely something that we need to pay attention to, right? Because Mayor Mamdani will be in the news, and he'll be, there'll be a lot of coverage, and we'll see what that looks like over the next months and years, right? So,
yeah.
Okay, so last week, Nadia, was Veterans Day. I wanted to take a minute to shine a positive light on those that serve. You may know I'm not a big Department of War guy, but, and I think that when President AOC is elected, I think she should rename it the Department of Peace, right? Which would totally screw people, really mess people up. But the U.S. military is one of the most diverse organizations in the country. Black and Latino citizens are disproportionately more likely to serve than those, as are those that are middle and lower income, right? So rural areas and poorer states are much more likely to send their kids to the military. These folks pay a much higher price than folks like me for bad foreign policy decisions, and we make those no matter who controls the White House. That is a bipartisan thing, bad foreign policy decisions that get people into wars. So anyway, I just want to acknowledge their sacrifice and sacrifice their families and wish them well.
Yeah, thank you for your service, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is it for Leadership and Innovation Unlocked. This is a production of Inclusive Collective Media and edited by Ari Mathey. We'd love to hear from you, so send us your feedback at inclusivecollectivepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Anything else? No, that's it.
I think that's it.
Okay.
No TikTok.
Not yet. We'll join TikTok again soon. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe and rate us as well. Tell us what you think wherever you get your podcasts, and then share us with your friends. Thanks again to my friend, Dr. Nadia Butt, and Dr. Nicole Boyko of Perceptics. We'll see you all in 2 weeks on December 2nd. Bye, Nadia.
Be well.